It's the Task Management and Time Blocking Podcast, episode 37. You are an efficient person, but you also happen to be polite and you care about other people. As such, when they want some of your time, you're happy to give it. However, there are personalities, there are certain people you find to be difficult. Why? They take away too much of your time. In conversation with them, you find yourself glancing at your watch, trying to be productive by ending the conversation, but you find that you can't. You're stuck. No, you don't want to be rude, but what can you do to address this particular personality, this particular kind of person, who, for the sake of this podcast, we're calling a time hoarder? Tune into this episode to hear from me and my special guest, Jennifer Morin, as we tackle this wicked problem together. I'm Francis Wade, and welcome to the Task Management and Time Blocking Podcast. And welcome back. As you can see, we're joined on the stage by Jennifer Morin. And before I welcome Jennifer and introduce her, I'd like to do a couple of things. One thing is to welcome you if you're a guest to this show, because this is a different kind of show, different kind of podcast. We're looking to pull out some of the skills and abilities of the most productive people. And the way we do that is by engaging in diagnosing a problem. So at the beginning of the show, I described a particular problem that we have with time hoarders, many of us. And here we're going to slow things down a bit. Both of us are going to dig into the issue and show you how we solve these kinds of problems, not just our solutions at the end. And this one is so tough, we don't necessarily even have a solution at the end. So we're going to rely, as we do on every call, on every episode, on some sort of serendipity. And by serendipity, I mean that we're looking for answers and insights that we didn't have before we started the call. So we had we had conversations before. We have things we want to share with you, but we're also looking to make some magic happen in real time. And if that magic does happen, well, you'll hear an insight bell, which means that we've come across something that one of us never heard before. And if by some strange reason we get to the end of the episode and we've had no insights, you'll hear a buzzer, which means that we ran out of time. Didn't come up with anything. Why did we take this approach? Well, Einstein said if he had an hour to solve a problem, he'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about solutions. And that's what we're doing. So before I bring Jennifer up, let me tell you a story about Brenda. Brenda is an employee. Her colleague, she has a colleague, his name is Mike. He's new to the company and he's got lots of questions. He's engaging, interesting guy, not in the romantic kind of way, kind of in the business way. And he has lots of experience that he likes to share. She is an eldest child. She happens to be his team leader. She's kind of like his project manager. And as she listens to him, she notices that he sort of engages in a little bit of poor me, likes to tell stories, and kind of is dramatic in the kind of look what happened to me kind of way. A little bit of victim kind of telling or victim talk. But recently at lunch, she has noticed that he keeps her in conversation even when she needs to go. She's been trying to cut them short, these lunchtime chats, without luck. Pushing back her chair, looking at her watch, the perennial hint, it's not working. He keeps going regardless of the signals that she's sending. So she's thought about putting a fake alarm on her phone, on her smartphone, something to call her while at the right time to interrupt the conversation so that she can pretend to have a phone call that she doesn't really have. She's thought about asking a friend to interrupt. Oh, Brenda, here's something important. I need you right away. Sorry, Mike. Gotta take her away. She's thought about faking a bathroom break. Anything to terminate the conversation when it goes into overtime. But she feels guilty. These are passive-aggressive moves, which don't really address any kind of core issue. She's a productivity person, as I said, so she really does care about being productive and spending her day wisely. And she's starting to see these conversations with Mike as a productivity problem. But she thinks there's more to it than just productivity. As such, she really wants a better way to deal with time hoarders like Mike, and she doesn't want to upset him. She doesn't want to be rude, but what exactly does she do? Organized since birth, Jenny Morin loves to talk about efficient time use. She enjoys teaching seminars and gets a thrill out of the transformation through organization and time coaching. Her book, Get Organized Quick, has a 15-minute project for busy people. 15-minute projects, sorry, for busy people. She grew up on a small Maine farm and knows how to milk a cow efficiently, I bet. She's been a member of NAPO since 2008 and a time consultant since 2013. And she recently spoke to a national audience at the recent National Association of Productivity and Organizing Professionals Summit in California. Jenny, welcome to the podcast. What do you think about this situation that Brenda finds herself in with Mike?
Thank you, Francis. I think a lot of us have been in that kind of situation in the past. And I myself have a few time hoarders. And I've noticed, I became aware of this thing that happens when I'm leaving clients' houses as I'm helping them organize, especially if they're a hoarder. They follow me out to the car and try to keep me talking to them. And I didn't really notice it as a problem until another organizer on our national chat mentioned that hoarders are also time hoarders, and they'll try to hoard your time even after you've spent 3 hours going through all of their clutter. So yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting problem, and I honestly haven't figured out a good way to solve that yet. I just kind of tell them that I need to go, but
I know
it's weak sauce. So
well, it's what we do, because if we weren't, if listeners to this podcast, if we all weren't a little bit anal retentive around how we used our time, if we had different personalities, we probably would just smile and just listen and just keep going and keep the conversation going. But we're very time driven, right? So we are thinking of the next appointment that we have, the next thing that we need to do. We had planned to, already be on the road by now, and here we are, and it's an hour later.
And maybe we're hungry.
And we're hungry, and we're getting thirsty. And if we're standing in the sun, we're like getting roasted, or if we're in the cold, and this person is quite innocently, maybe, bending our ear. And we like to help people. So I imagine if you're listening, you're someone who likes to give advice, either because you have a lot to give. That's probably true for many of us, but also because you actually do like to contribute. You like to care. You care about people. And here's somebody asking for help, and here you are giving it, and now it's gone into overtime, and you don't know what to do. So like poor Brenda, we find ourselves kind of stuck. And we have this balance that we are trying to achieve between being caring and also being efficient and responsible. In this sense, I would say in this scenario, the real villain here, there is a villain here. So the villain here is the time hoarder, is the Michaels of the world, the person who is taking up our time and doesn't want us to go. We feel that they always have one more thing. Or they always say, we don't finish. No, we're not done yet. Don't go yet. And we feel as if they have some practices or some habits that we're now getting ensnared in. And we can kind of see it happening, but because we're in a conversation, we can't say, hold on, give me 5 minutes to think about this. We're right in the middle, and we're trying to figure it out in real time. And they have way more practice at this than we do. And before we know it, we're late, and we're
Mm.
nervous, and we have a feeling like we're looking for the exits. We want to escape. Is that kind of accurate?
Yeah, looking for, if I wasn't outside when this usually happens, I would be looking for the exits. But I'm outside sometimes with my hand on the handle, the door handle of my van, just like, okay.
Do you actually
So
get in the van, put the key in the car,
I
turn on
have
the key,
I
and
have gotten in the van and rolled down the window, and they sometimes keep talking. And I mean, that's as many cues as I feel like I could give. Oh,
uh,
it's the time to a client that's paying me. But they're not paying me for that extra 15 minutes. I end up talking in the driveway and my feet hurt. I'm tired. I've given all I could give, all I usually give to anybody, all of my best advice, humor, everything, for 3 hours. And now I need a break. So for me, it's actually about boundaries too, about creating boundaries. I have great boundaries when it comes to saying no to responsibilities that I know that I can't do justice to or that I don't believe enough in to support.
right
But saying no to a paying client and
in the heat of the
being
moment,
I'm worried about being too firm
right,
and offending them, or hurting their feelings.
right.
So these are just two things that I think about that keep me from sometimes saying, well, I really have to go. I really have to go now.
Right.
So
Right. No, the thing when someone sends us they call us up with some need, and we have a chance to think about it usually before we decide to engage them. So we have that
mhm.
time when we can think about, is this the kind of client I really want? And I remember I had an offer to work with someone, a CEO essentially, and in that first meeting, she shared it could have been a kidney stone in a jar. And she was keeping me there. And I had a feeling that I was caught in a routine that many others had been in as well. And I had a feeling that she needed extra help. So I actually bailed out of the meeting and said, let me reset and do another meeting. And brought on another consultant. And we both decided not to work with this individual. It was just too much. Too much. And again, we weren't, this was all prospecting, we weren't being paid. But it felt as if
Right.
we were being just drawn into something that we didn't have either the inclination or the skill to really deal with.
Ah,
And it doesn't need to be a client though, right? It could be a family member. True.
could be anybody, could be a family member, could be someone somewhat, or a casual friend that perhaps is lonely. I guess this is a good time to talk about it. I have a friend. I really like this guy. He has great stories, but I know if I see him at church in passing, and I know if I stopped and engaged with him, I'm going to be standing there for half an hour. So what I do if I don't feel like spending half an hour talking before I go home is I'm just like, hi, have a good week, that kind of thing. And I keep walking. So
You already have
that's
a routine
I do. I have a little
pre-thought,
routine. He knows
pre-established.
exactly. And sometimes I do. Once in a while we chat, but you have to go in with that expectation that it's going to be a good half hour before you can exit the conversation.
Right.
And
So
even then it's hard. So
right. Especially, if you have a family member, I'm thinking of, Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas or
mhm.
Hanukkah or whatever it might be, an occasion where there's that family member, that in-law, often that we don't want to be sitting beside. Whatever, however this thing goes down, we don't want to be sitting beside them at the table because we may never get up. And it's not because we don't want to get up, it's because we're going to start to hear about they might take out kidney stones and start to share with us. All kinds of stuff can start to go down.
Exactly.
And
And you've heard all the stories before. They are just
you
repeat stories.
these are, but they apparently gain a new life in the retelling, so they get retold. So, folks, if as you're listening, you may start to sort of remember someone that this happened with. The true sign of it for me is the regret that you feel after
Mm.
the time has lost, and you kind of, as you're driving away or walking away or hiding, you start to think, God, I just lost, and you realize that you had some intention, and that intention was not realized. So
Mm.
internally, however, you may feel even a sense of guilt because you're really a caring, kind person. You're considerate. You're not mean. You're not known for being antisocial. However, you kind of do still want to help, and you feel confused because it's exhausting. If taken to the ridiculous extremes, this is a time suck of no mean order. And the worst ones are the ones that surprise you when you do. Somebody from high school, that you don't you barely remember.
Barely remember.
You forgot this particular thing. Maybe they didn't have it developed when they were in high school, but
Mm.
now as an adult, it's full range, full blown habit, and you are caught in it, and in the moment you don't know what to do,
Mm. Mhm.
and it's unproductive from a point of view of a productivity podcast. It's unproductive to just keep going and to not have a way of dealing with this. It's a time suck, using our language, but the term that we came up with was time hoarder, or that you came up
Yes.
with, Jennifer. Was that a time hoarder,
Time
correct?
hoarder. And I'm not the first one to use it.
Okay.
Organizers that work with hoarders on a regular basis, some of them have used this term. I don't think it's trademarked, so we're okay.
Okay. All right. We're okay with that. So there are space hoarders, and folks, you may know a space hoarder. You walk into their
Oh,
living space, and there's stuff everywhere, and it's all over, and it's a very visible kind of thing. But time hoarding is very hard to, because where does that start, and where does just good manners end? That line, it's
mm-hmm,
culturally defined. It's
mm-hmm.
probably different for older folks than it is for younger folks. East Coast, West Coast. Do you live in a city? Do you live in somewhere rural? It probably changes, and you probably can't just take your practices and transport them with you wherever you go in the world. Probably different at work than it is in a social setting, different in your neighborhood. So we're looking for some kind of principle rather than just the right thing to say in the right moment. So we're looking for, I guess, a blend of both. Would that be accurate, Jennifer?
Yeah, I definitely feel like we do have several kind of time hoarders. And yeah, we are looking for a balance, like we were talking about, between the good manners and the uh, wanting to help the person, but also needing to get away. So we have a conflict there that we're feeling inside as we're talking with them.
Right, right. So if we don't, really make some progress today, I think we would be subject to further monologues, or just
Right.
or
Captive,
rants.
being
We would continue
captive.
to be captives. We would be just, ready for it to happen again. Sometimes I've noticed that the time hoarders may be very boastful. There's one in my life who's, he's very eager to tell me how much money he's making, and how business is going well, and how the COVID was really good to him. Lots of details about how well he's doing.
Yeah. TMI. Too much information. That's
You didn't
TM.
ask for it, and here it is.
Yeah.
And then there are some who like to one up. I noticed that there's some of those also.
Top
Have
the
you seen a
story, like
a
do
one
it,
upper?
do a better story. Oh, if you think that was bad, let me tell you about this. Yeah. Hmm.
They want at some level, I guess. We can only imagine, right? But we imagine that they want to walk away feeling that they are in fact better than you. Some way they've won. They're winning. And sometimes I notice, I just kind of give in and say, yeah, whoa, that's good for you. Great for you. Congratulations. That's awesome that's happening. And
So
really
that
what
could
I'm
be
doing is
like,
just hoping for the exit,
yeah.
hoping
When
that
you
this
said that,
closes now.
I thought of the word socially aggressive, you
The
know,
term
just like
socially aggressive.
they're
I
trying
don't
to
know.
top your story. They talk some, and they want to be heard, but they want to be heard so badly that they'll talk over other people. And I don't know if this is truly the kind of the profile that you're thinking of for a time hoarder, but I think the kind of person you're talking about right now is that kind of person. That's kind
Right.
of what you think of as a bore at a party, not
We
B
used to
O
use
R
that
E,
term back in the old days.
right? BOOR, a bore.
A bore.
Nobody wants to sit by them. Like you were saying at Thanksgiving dinner, nobody wants to sit by them. And there are reasons for that.
Well,
They've earned it. They,
I think we could say that there are different tells that
mhm.
some time hoarders are kind of, want to play sort of a poor me role like Mike.
Yeah.
Some want to do the one-upmanship thing. Others just want to talk
Yeah. About
because no one
anything.
else in their life is apparently listening. So here they are telling you everything and you don't want to know it, but you're privy to it. You're all kinds of details and you're like, oh boy, I want to try and forget that because you know something that you wish you didn't
I
know.
wish I didn't know that. Yeah.
So there's different
Mm,
kinds of time hoarders, which is maybe why we get fooled because they don't all come at you the same way. A demanding client, they tend to fit a particular mold, so we can kind of see them coming.
yeah.
But in all different parts of our life and traveling around, it's harder to pick up on a time hoarder because they come with different personalities. The effect is the same. The time is lost, and at the end of it, we're like, "What the heck did I? What just happened there? I should have been." So that feeling of regret is the same at the end. It's called that the
Right.
defect. And but the causes of it, which is that you're in a conversation that you are trying to exit without causing damage. Maybe that regret business is the sign for us that it just happened. Unfortunately, of course, that's just too late. By the time we get that feeling of regret, the time is
Yeah.
already lost. So
Right.
we need something that will work earlier than a feeling of regret. That's like a lag metric, no?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I was thinking, as you were saying that, when you're listening and you're looking for the exit and you're feeling trapped by the conversation, you're actually uh, towards either once you realize what has happened and how you are trapped, you actually might have some feelings of self-recrimination. You may be kind of blaming yourself for getting trapped into this conversation too, and say, oh yeah, I forgot this happened last time I talked to this person. I should have remembered, I should have like exited sooner when I still could get out. Yeah,
Stop blaming yourself for not
that kind of
being
thing.
quicker on the draw.
Yeah, exactly.
I promised myself this wouldn't happen again, and here I am.
Yeah.
I
Not
have a
yeah,
root.
not a fun place to be for sure.
No, and it's not productive, but we're likely to fall into it if we don't make some progress today. So let's see what we can come up with.
Yeah.
So um so in the story I told about Brenda, she's trying some tricks, right? And that's what some of us do. We or just outright lie. Oh, I have some water on the stove that's boiling. I've tried that. Didn't
Did
work.
it work? Did it work?
Just talk right over it. But lying and tricking and deceiving and getting our phone to do stuff, and those are methods that we try that they don't work, right? They don't seem to crack the situation or make a
No,
dent.
nope. Excuses do not usually work. I have learned. If I say if I'm really specific, maybe I have an appointment in 15 minutes. I really need to go. Sometimes that will work, but sometimes they don't stop talking, and you have to almost be rude and just say, sorry, I'm getting in the car. I need to go. Rare. That's
Turning on the
rare for me
engine.
with clients. Yeah. It's rare, but like I said, the hoarders, I ended up with 3 hoarders this year working with, and after 15 years of avoiding hoarders, I ended up I was like, I've got enough experience. I can work with some hoarders. It'll be all right. Every single one of them followed me to the car. It was very interesting. Yeah.
Really, like a perfect match.
All of them, same behavior.
Wow.
Don't understand. I still don't quite understand why they feel the need to do that after we've been talking for 3 hours, but yeah, maybe it's a stress reliever for them to unwind after the work we've done that was hard for them. That could be it. I don't know.
Well, they this is a successful bit is that they love your attention. I mean, that's what gets us in trouble too.
Right.
We have a sense that the conversation is going well until we start to leave and we realize, uh-oh, this
We're
is
not
not
in
what
control.
well
Yeah.
looks like. It
Yeah.
was, we thought it was well. And then, then we start to go into hope, right? We start to pray inside that, please leave me out. Please, can we conclude this? Please stop. And we have that inside feeling of, we're like begging the universe to release us from our obligation. We're like, and that doesn't work either.
No, because we're not really in control of the conversation at that point. They are completely controlling the conversation. I personally don't like that feeling of not being in control, or not at least being able to have a closure for that conversation when I need it, at some point. So if you can't see the end at all, and they're just one thing after another, oh, and then this, that's when I start to get stressed.
Right. Same here. I've also tried really like deep listening. So
Oh,
have
yeah.
you, I'm sure you have because of the work that you do, but, or listeners may know, there's certain schools of thought that say that people keep sharing until they feel as if they're being heard. And
Mm-hmm.
once they feel that they've been heard, they stop talking or they stop feeling that anxiety because the experience is one of your listening actually addresses their anxiety to some degree. So they don't have that initial feeling of needing to get things out. So with that school of thought, I've thought to myself, oh, I just need to listen better.
Mm-hmm.
And I listen actively and say, oh, so what you're saying is, and work.
Didn't work. Oh, yeah, too bad.
It seems to fuel the fire.
Ah,
It seems to
yeah,
make it
that's
worse.
bad.
It doesn't. It
Yeah.
doesn't. It does not bring things. I mean, with many people, and I would say with most people, it
Mm-hmm.
works. There
Right.
comes a realization where the person says something like, "Wow, I've told you like my whole life. You must be like, they kind of catch themselves and realize that, boy, that must have been really on my chest because I don't know where that came from. But anyway, thanks for listening." And they start to bring it to closure themselves. They start to
Mm-hmm.
indicate that they're grateful for your listening ear and they really appreciate it. And so that's most people. But here we're talking about an individual that, from my experience, all of my listening skills and the things I've been taught.
It doesn't work. And I've been told I'm a good listener by a lot of people, and I work on it, on the active listening. But at that point where you're ready to be done with the conversation, because conversation is a two-way street, it needs
Right.
to be, you know,
Right.
at that point where you're kind of done and you want to end the conversation and the person isn't following any of your social cues, like you're talking about, looking at the watch, oh, I have, or saying, you know, backing away, slowly backing away, that doesn't work. Door
That doesn't
hand
work.
on the door handle doesn't work. Leaving the house doesn't work. They just follow you out. Or it
Turning
could
on the
be,
engine.
yeah, and or it could be, you know, someone in an office, you know, if someone's trying to hoard the receptionist's time or even a therapist's time, you know, how does that look? They're just standing at the reception desk for half an hour chatting with the receptionist or the gatekeeper or the assistant. You
Right.
know, how does that person then get going with their work without being rude? You know,
Right.
these are problems. These are problems, and people do develop skills, but to kind of work through that with people, but they don't usually work on this kind of person that we're talking about. Yeah.
No, in a professional setting, so there's a kind of professional therapist to client relationships. I had a therapist at one point. She was awesome, and I think she had a clock. She didn't have an alarm on the clock. It wasn't as, but she encouraged us to pay attention to the time using
Uh-huh.
these different cues. So the impression I got was that that's a part of her training, that she's trained to have conversations occur inside of a time box. So in a
Mhm.
professional setting, you can do things like that. But the ones that we're talking about are quasi professional, where they're outside of a well established sort of norm, and there are no explicit rules. They may not be a paying relationship, but these are the ones that are so tricky because you you're not quite working inside of this professional realm, but the behaviors are still happening anyway.
Mhm. Mhm. You know, I just wanted to show you this. I showed you this when we talked
Oh
earlier.
yeah, yeah.
This is called, well, there is something called a timer, which I think started
Right.
and you just, when okay, I just remembered a client I had. Whoa, sorry about that. So it shows you how much time you have left. It's going to click down to an hour and beep at some point, right? And when it goes down, you'll see that you have, 15 minutes. If you're in person with a client and you have one of these and they know you have an hour, this helps a great deal. I actually had a time coaching client. Oh, I might have to turn this off. A time coaching client who was a talker. You know those kind of clients. I wouldn't call her a time hoarder, but she was a talker. And I would regularly set this, and it makes it so that she would know that our hour, and I would set it for 50 minutes so that she would hear it. And at that point we could, we could wrap up.
Right.
Didn't work a lot of the time. And it was such a lovely conversation. And, she was paying me. I would say, oh, my timer just beeped. She just keep on talking, sometimes. And
Speed
I
bump.
would be, and so I had to get a little bit more firm about that. And eventually it did get better. But
Okay.
yeah.
In a professional relationship, you can talk about, and you can bring it up as a point of conversation and say, by the way, do you notice that our
Yeah.
conversations keep going for too long?
Yeah. So
And you can use tools like that and have it be okay. But you bring one of those to Thanksgiving and it's like,
you can't bring it to church. You can't bring it to Thanksgiving. No.
I bring it to a neighborhood meeting. Can't take it, you can't take it to the grocery store in case they show up. You need some other kinds of
Skills.
thinking or tools. Right. So I would say these other solutions that we're talking about in these atypical or these more daily situations don't work because they don't really get to the problem, the issue. They don't get to the heart of the
Mhm.
challenge. They're kind of dealing with it at the surface. And I'm talking about for us. I mean, because in this situation, we're not trying to solve that person's problem, but I think almost we become a part of the problem. So we now have a problem. And
Yes. Their problem is now our problem because we're stuck in a conversation that we don't know how to get out of in a gracious way.
right.
So,
And maybe by thinking of it as their problem, that's good. This is the normal thing to do in my mind is to think about how wrong they were and go tell my wife, man, I got trapped with one of these people again. It's to, you know, dramatize it, make them wrong, and that
mhm.
doesn't work. Probably because in that moment, so in some subtle way, I've become the victim,
Oh, yeah.
and maybe that's why I don't really have. I know we're getting into solutions now, but I'm wondering if this is part of why it persists the way it does because I don't see myself as responsible in that moment. I wonder, but let's table that so that when we come to the solutions, we can take a look at that.
Okay.
So it's a hard problem to solve. It's we don't usually talk about this problem. I've never heard the term time hoarders, and before talking with you, I never thought, I knew I had the problem because my wife and I have talked about it, but
Yeah.
I've never didn't have a name. It
Ah.
just seemed like that's a guy to avoid. The general class of problem wasn't seen. It was more a case of tactics to avoid individuals. And maybe that's the first insight we can share with people is that this is not a personality tick in the sense that you're looking for a person. Maybe there's a structure to this thing that we could dismantle that repeats itself with different people. And that's what we're looking to tackle. It's a
Structure.
structure, not a type of person. So, in other words, it kind of subtly moves the focus away from identifying these kinds of people to seeing the structure at play that we're trying to break apart. Because I guess it's truer to say that this is our structure. If we have the problem, then it's useful to think that we have the structure. We're setting it up. It's not them. They don't go into our minds and invade, or it might feel that way. They don't go into our minds and invade it and stick something in there. This is something that is resident within us that gets triggered. And when it gets triggered, it sets up like a block of behavior. And that block of
You-
behavior is what we're trying to understand. Maybe that's number one. I don't know. What do you think?
Oh, yeah. It sets up a certain type of behavior in ourselves. And we start to become we start to think like a victim instead of the person in control of the conversation or the person. Yeah, maybe we're giving up our power to them because we feel either so sorry for them or so much compassion to them. We're giving up our power and our control of the conversation and letting them dictate the terms.
Right. The way you just said it was interesting because we can
Hmm.
construe ourselves as the all we're trying to do is help. All we're trying to do is listen. That we're the good guys.
Weak sauce.
Say again.
I said, and that's the weak sauce. That's the victim. I'm just trying to help them. That's why I stayed
I'm
talking
just
to them for an hour.
we
Yeah.
tell ourselves that, right? But
Uh-huh.
but what you said is great, which is that we're actually while we're saying that, we're actually giving up power at that same moment without seeing that that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
It feels like we're helping, but in these situations, maybe it's more correct to say that we're giving up power, but it's masquerading as helping. It's masquerading as being helpful.
Right. So the sooner that we can get to self-realization, to realizing that we're giving up our power, the sooner we can come up with a strategy that works to get out of that particular conversation or conversations like that conversation.
Right,
Hmm.
right. And maybe it's up to us to find that, let's call it a trigger for the sake of a better word, want of a better word. There's a trigger that we don't see until it's too late. And by the time we're trying to escape and coming up with all these tricks and starting to lie and pretend and hope that things happen, doesn't hope it starts raining so that it ends. By the time all these thoughts kick in, we're way past the trigger that we should have noticed, where something flipped into something else, and we didn't see it. It was we kept telling ourselves that, oh, I'm here to help, I'm here to help, I'm here to help. Trigger, I'm here to help, I'm here to help, I'm here to help. And 10 minutes later, we missed the trigger that happened 10 minutes before.
Mm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it came. It's just that it didn't come in a form that allowed us to recognize it or see it. And by the time we get to 10 minutes, half an hour, 2 hours down the pike, we're lost.
Oh, yeah. I hope that doesn't happen, but it has happened to people. I'm sure people in the past. As an adult, I don't know if I've ever been stuck for 2 hours, but I will say I have been stuck for half an hour and even longer, an hour.
Here in
Um,
Jamaica, we have cultural things about norms around
uh,
not giving people time and not being all that productive, and time with people is more important than time. So we have like a thing, I would say,
mm,
a cultural tick. So I have been in 5 minutes turn into 2 hour situations.
yeah,
Sure.
it's so island time is. I mean, a lot of people call
When
it
island
island
time kicks
time.
in.
Hmm. On the
So
mainland, see, I'm from the East Coast. Originally Maine, and lived in Vermont. It's quite different. People are very much more, let's go, let's get this done. Let's be, at least in my experience, unless you're at a play group or unless you're there at an event and you're just like talking with whoever. But um, once you start seeing clients and your time is valuable, and oh my gosh, I have these 5 things to get done, or these 3 things that I really want to get done this afternoon after this client, then the pressure kind of builds. Or even if you don't have a big to-do list, you still want to get off your feet. You still want to go home and have lunch. There are things you need to do to take care of yourself that are not
right,
getting met because you're talking to this person for an unknown length of time.
right.
you know
So if there were a trigger,
Mm.
what would a trigger be? I don't know. So I'm really
Are you
asking. I'm
talking
really
about a
asking. I'm not
cue,
setting you
like to
up.
figure out if it's that kind of person? Are you talking about a cue, like is this a is this a time hoarder, or how to figure out if this person is a time hoarder when you say trigger?
Maybe it's too hard to figure out if they're a time hoarder if you're meeting them for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's probably a part of us that we don't want to judge people and say, "Oh, he's a time hoarder." I can tell. It might be too early, but maybe the trigger that
No,
maybe there's a trigger that comes before you're able to make a decision that they're a time hoarder or not.
there's one thing I can think of, and because it feels like when you're in conversation with a person like this, they aren't terribly interested in you or what's been happening in your life. And if you try to, relate to them and say, "Oh yeah, that happened to me," sometimes they won't listen, or they'll kind of half listening. You can tell they're just half listening, just waiting to say the next thing. And they're not interested in you. They're more interested in getting whatever it is off their chest or relieving their loneliness, whatever it is. And that's not a formula, by the way, to make friends. It's a formula to stay lonely.
Right.
Which is,
it doesn't work for them.
Right. It doesn't work. So,
but in our situation, it at that moment where it occurs to us, hang on, I mentioned my, problem, issue, accomplishment, whatever, and they breeze right by it like roadkill. That's not really. I don't want to spell it. Back to me. So the maybe is there a trigger that when we sense that it's a back to me, back over here with me. Let me tell you some more. When it seems as if we're just incidental to the conversation, that we're there just to provide the listening ear, but not to provide any sharing or any giving of ourselves. That moment may be when we realize that this is no longer a conversation. It's it's a lecture or a rant or a
monologue.
Monologue. It's a fake. Maybe not fake, but it's not a dialogue any longer. It's not a real dialogue. It's a pretend dialogue. Yeah. Where you're pretending to listen to what I say, and I'm pretending that what I say matters. Because now I have evidence that as roadkill that it actually does not matter. Mm-hmm. So maybe there's a dawning.
Mm-hmm. Probably the sooner you can, if you say you know the person and you have gotten trapped in conversation with them before, you could do a little test like that and try to share something from your life that's similar to what's happening to them. Mm-hmm. The other trigger, or maybe a cue would be a better word, that you're talking to time hoarder, is that they don't usually ask you questions about yourself.
Right.
They might say, hi, how are you? But they don't really want to know how you are. They want to tell you how they are. And, you just say the generic, oh, I'm fine, or I'm good. So that's also a cue and kind of a little red flag for you to kind of notice. But if you've never talked to the person before, you might be in trouble. It's only on like kind of the repeat conversations where you've already got trapped in conversation, a long conversation, a one-way conversation with them before, that you could experiment and try a few of these things early on in the conversation and see what happens. So
you try to share something that's not trivial, that's meaningful. If you and they treat it like roadkill, they're gone down the road. What if you followed up and said, but I don't really know if you want to really hear what my experience or not. You actually address their unwillingness to hear what you have to say.
Have you ever tried that, Francis? Because I never have.
I don't think I have. It would, after the fact, I know I've had that thought, the same one that you're talking about, that person really wasn't, but I didn't query to see were they really interested. Do you really want to know, or you're just kind of asking? Yeah. No, I can't recall ever asking that. But it would stop the conversation in its tracks, in a way.
I think so. I think it might work. It might work depending on the personality of the person that is hoarding, doing the time, hoarding your time.
Do you really want to hear?
Do you really want to hear how I'm doing?
Are you really? I could tell you more, but do you really want to hear? And sometimes if they blow right past that and don't even recognize that you're asking a question, then you realize, okay, that could be an early tip off that, okay, well, let's talk for 2 more minutes and then I'll go.
Mm,
And you don't say, I gotta go. I have a meeting. It's that you're bringing an end to it without having an excuse.
yes. And that can work. That can work too, because I think people can definitely sense when you're making excuses.
Mhm.
One thing I've tried, I don't know if you've ever done this. If you know someone is a talker and you need to call them on the phone or talk to them in person for some reason to find out something or to impart some information to them, I have tried the technique of saying, okay, hi, I only have 10 minutes or I only have 15 minutes, but I really wanted to call you and let you know that blank.
Right.
Just telling them right at the outset, this is how much
Right.
time I have, and using my, if you have to, if it's really hard to get out of that conversation, use your little handy timer or a timer on your watch. You can, or your not your watch or your phone, whatever you've got,
And you could say, I have a reminder on my phone. I have an alarm on my phone that's gonna go off in about 10 minutes to tell me that it's time for me to be in a call that I need to be on. So you could set it up and say
Mhm.
ahead of time. So this is not you
Yes.
being sneaky. This is you being upfront and saying, before my timer goes off, let me talk with you. It's gonna go off in about 10 minutes time to tell me
Yeah.
that I need to jump on another activity or start another project or move on to a call.
Right. Yeah. So
So
you're
you're
setting an
being more transparent.
expectation. You're just setting that
Mhm.
expectation right up front, which is one thing that coaches do. They set expectation. This is what you can expect from coaching. This is what you can expect from a coaching package. These are the takeaways you're going to get. And you can do that on a smaller scale in one conversation with somebody. Is set
Right.
the
But especially if you
expectation right up
know it's likely to go on.
front.
You
Hmm.
can't do that if you're being, if you're in the line at the off or in the line at the grocery store and you're being
No,
hijacked.
no. But
Again,
you
the
went,
victim talk.
but you have ice cream melting in your cart, so you have to go.
If you remember, right? So the victim business, maybe that's our second insight, I think, or third. It's another insight that
Mhm.
if we find ourselves going into this victim, that we're on the receiving end, we're not owning o- our problem. We're thinking that it's them being them, as opposed to that we're not being we're not bringing something to the party. Let's not. I won't say what we need to do, but there's something that we're not owning in that moment, and that's what, because our lack of ownership is now in the space of the conversation. Therefore, we're now being a victim.
Yeah, we're on the receiving end of their monologue, basically. Um, and
We've put ourselves there,
and what
and we've put ourselves there.
we have let ourselves get into this conversation trap.
Mhm.
We're captive. Um, I think a lot of people that do this kind of thing are capitalizing on the guilt that we feel, or on maybe even just on how compassionate we are or how nice we
Mhm.
are,
Mhm.
and they readily will take advantage of that because they
Mhm.
don't find that every day. Okay, so maybe they're seizing that opportunity, and we don't realize. I'm not going to say danger. We don't realize the what kind of time waster that's going to be when we enter into that conversation.
Right.
Um, we don't see what's coming. They know what's coming. But we don't see what's coming.
Right.
And
We don't notice it at all.
uh-huh.
They
Yeah,
they
it's pretty easy. Like you said, if the person is really, is captivating or tells good stories,
mhm.
at first you're kind of charmed and you're like, oh, this is great. This person is
I,
great.
I love a good story. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah. And then when you realize you can't get out of you realize it's going to be very difficult to extricate yourself from the conversation. That's when you kind of start to get stressed and might you kind of, like you said, kind of you're starting to become the victim because you're like, I don't know what to do. And that's,
But that makes me wonder, right? If to build on the idea that you mentioned before of boundaries. So
yeah.
is there a way in which we don't have a decent boundary in place? And that's what, it's just a possible interpretation, is that we don't have a boundary in place. And because we don't, though, it's not explicit. Let's say we have an implicit boundary. And because we only have an implicit boundary, then when it gets violated, it's so implicit that we don't see it happening. So we miss the trigger.
It's subtle. It's subtle.
Too subtle, right? It's not blatant. And before we know it, the boundary has been, the behavior has gone way into the boundary. I thought of one as you were speaking, because if we're listening to someone, or we're in one of these conversations with a time hoarder, and as they're talking and they're doing their thing, and we're doing our thing, which is, we're trying to find an escape, we're trying to pretend, we're trying to find a good excuse, where our mind has gone into like save me mode. I'm a victim, right?
So yeah, that could be bad too.
I wonder, right, if we couldn't share some of that
with them.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't say I'm no you're a victim. I'm not making myself you're a victim. I wouldn't say that.
Right.
But I wonder if I could say something like, oh my God, I just realized the last 5 minutes of what you just said, I didn't hear one word of it.
Oh, that might be a good that feels less confrontational to me than the other thing that you said.
And if they keep going and say, oh, let me tell you again, you say, wait, hold on, time out. Let me think about why I have not been listening. Oh, it's because, and maybe if we make a reference to an internal dialogue that is now taking us over. No, it could be I get me out of here, I'm a victim dialogue. It could be I have another call. It could be I'm wasting the day. It could be I really want to get these 15 minutes back because I just lost them. Whatever the internal dialogue is, it's now present for you, and it's blocking the conversation. And if you let them know that you have a whole internal thing going on that's now increasing in stress, and if you don't go take care of it, you can't listen any longer. You need to cut this short because you're now distracted and you're now taken away. You're no longer in the dialogue.
Right. So
could you? I don't know.
I would feel more comfortable saying something like that, Francis. Like, oh my gosh, I just realized I haven't really heard the last 5 minutes of you talking. I think you can then follow up with a boundary statement like, I think I need a break, or I think it's time for us to go rest, or maybe I just need to go and rest. Something like that.
It's not an ownership there, right?
I might just need some self-care statement, like
a self-care.
I think I need to go get my lunch and rest and get on with my day. Or get on with my day. That's a good one too. I don't know if you've tried that one before.
Get on with my day.
It's not making an excuse. It's just a fact.
Right. It's just here's what, and I wonder if the person just keeps going, right? Because they could keep talking, right? Because they're good at
right. And if they keep talking, what now? What? Yeah.
they could, they just move it back to them. Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. That happened to me yesterday. Blah, 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 blah. And you say, well, I don't want to waste your time, because if you keep talking and I keep not listening, we're not going anywhere. Why don't we reconvene or never convene? Why don't we end it? And maybe at a future time, And maybe you're thinking never again, but
Right,
end
right.
it here so that we can just go about, so that we can stop where we've stopped, and I can walk away remembering what you said, and you can walk away remembering what I said, and then we'll.
Hmm. Yeah, and I don't know. Yeah, I think that just saying, yeah, it might be time. I need to get on with my day. Or maybe you could even say, so we can go about our days, and kind of emphasize that that's a separate that's a separate thing. We're parting ways here. Yeah. I mean, I feel like that is a much more doable phrase for me to use. I didn't hear a word of what you said the last 5 minutes. And yeah, it's a little bit, it's not aggressive. I think it's assertive to say something like that, but it doesn't feel rude to me,
Right.
especially if you've already been talking with a person for at least a good 15, 20 minutes.
Right.
And that would be, I feel like that would be appropriate to say something like that.
Right. I think I could. I think it's practical enough that I think I would try it. I'm gonna run it by my wife and see what she thinks. See
Yeah.
if I think differently.
Good idea. Good idea.
She's not somebody that is, she's not a time hoarder, but we have a common relationship with a time hoarder. So, wondering if, I'm so distracted. I didn't hear anything of the last 5 minutes. Maybe we should, or can you just summarize it, what I've just missed, in just one sentence, so I can walk away with it? Just
I don't
practical.
even. That's I think that's dangerous and tricky, and that I don't know if asking them to summarize is really, for some of the
Feasible.
people I've heard of, that I've dealt with, I don't really think that would work. I think they would just start going on and on again. Summarizing is not their strong suit.
They can't. So if you summarized and said, "Well, let me test to see, because I have a feeling I missed half of what you just said, but let me
Yeah.
summarize so that we can close out here, because my head is in a whole nother space." You're saying A, B, C, D, and E, correct? And they say, "Yes, you got it." And you say, "All right, well, let's end it here, because my mind has already traveled to my next appointment, or has traveled to my next destination, and it's already over there trying to deal with some other thing." Or maybe that excuse that my attention has traveled. My body is here, but my attention is gone. And I don't want to keep pretending that I'm listening when my attention has traveled on to something else.
Right. I kind of like that. My whole head is in a whole nother place, or my mind has already traveled to my next destination. You're thinking, which is true, because you're thinking of the things that you need to do, or the next person you're meeting, whatever it is. So it's time. They've had their time. You've been generous. You may have been too generous, but nevertheless, yeah. And I think that is also a good way to end the conversation. I've always had, on the phone especially, it is hard. I don't know if you've noticed, women on the phone. It is hard to end a conversation, especially with someone that you've been talking with for, say, somebody you wanted to talk with for an hour, and we say goodbye like 8 times. Okay. So, that's kind of an aside, but, with this kind of person, you don't want to get into that. You just want to say goodbye and start walking away.
Right.
Like I do with the person at church that I see at church. Oh, hey, keep walking. Be friendly, keep walking. If you're not going to be willing to engage in that half-hour conversation or hour conversation, it could turn out to be.
Right. Well, I'm sure our listeners are bringing to mind men and women who have that kind of multiple goodbye syndrome. Call it that. Where
Syndrome.
You are trying to go, and the one goodbye leads to another conversation, leads to another, and your attention has long left the building, but your body is still there trying to follow it out the door.
Right.
I think they could relate. Well, Jenny, we've come up with a few different ways of looking at this that I hope are useful. Is there anything that we didn't cover, or anything that you thought of that we didn't touch on?
Oh, yeah. One thing that we were talking about mentioning is heart sync clients.
Tell us about
A
that.
heart
Right.
sync client. Okay, so when you think about, you've already met with this client a couple of times, and this happens for psychologists, psychiatrists, could be even doctors, lawyers, and professional organizers and coaches. You think, when you think about this person, your heart kind of goes, oh, I'm meeting
Yeah.
with them this week. Oh, and you're not excited about it. You're not excited to help them, not because you're not a good person, but because you know they're going to take everything there are different reasons. They're
Right.
going to take everything you have, and then they're going to maybe not even be grateful for one.
Mhm.
That's one thing. Or if it's a person that's canceled on you multiple times, and you kind of have a bad taste in your mouth about that, you don't have a good boundary in place, you don't have a good policy about multiple cancellations, that could be heart sync client as well. Or it could just be somebody that, like the time hoarders, that doesn't maybe doesn't take your advice, doesn't ever improve, and so you don't get that great feeling that you're looking for when you're coaching somebody. You want to help them, you want to change their lives and give them benefits, give them great tactics that they can use in their life to have a better life. If they're not making any progress, they're also a heart sync client. And the person that coined this term is my business coach, and I'll put her name in the link. She is the one that told me about this, and it's very, very true. When you have that, you need to listen to that feeling, because it probably means that you're not as invested in this. Maybe you're too invested in the relationship, and but this isn't healthy for you. So you're not
Right.
respecting your own. You need to
Boundaries.
establish some boundaries for yourself, and it's probably time to let that client go, because there might be somebody else that can help them, that would be right for them, but it's
Right.
not. It's not you. And maybe there's nobody that can help them,
Right.
but it's not you, and you don't need to let yourself suffer or give yourself that self-recrimination I was talking about, because you haven't been able to help them because they're a heart sync client. So
Right.
that's just
It's a
one
great
thing.
distinction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one thing that I wanted to mention. And sorry to say this, but if this happens, if this person, say this person, you're supposed to meet with them and they cancel, you feel an immense feeling of relief. And say it's the third time they've canceled. For me, on my policies, they're done.
They're done.
No, they cannot coach with me anymore. They do not get any more organizing with me. So three strikes and you're out, basically. So, that's a feeling of relief. Wow, I have an excuse to fire this client, whoever they are.
So it's a great indicator that if you have a feeling that firing a client gives you some freedom, then they could be a heart sync client.
Yes.
And you probably have passed that first trigger, second trigger, third trigger. You're probably deep into
Who knows?
probably even a world of regret at this point. But
Yeah.
so, folks, if you have if you're listening and you have clients, you're someone who's in the coaching or caring or health or mental health or any kind of the professions that are related to what we're talking about, consider the heart sync client and what you need to do early on to notice the first trigger, and then what you need to do later on to basically free yourself in the long term. It's different from the conversation with a time hoarder. A long-term relationship with a time hoarder is more tricky and more challenging to get out of. But at least, I guess, the part I'm getting from what you're saying is that telling yourself the truth about it is the beginning.
Yes, for sure. Realizing it. And everybody knows the first step to addressing a problem is realizing that there's a problem. So naming it. Oh,
Right.
this person is a heart sync client.
Right.
Woo, that just dawned on me. Wow, it's actually a little bit of a relief to discover that I'm not, the problem is not actually with me. The problem is, because they're a heart sync client, they're not doing the work, or they're, doing other things that make the work not effective. So,
Right. And to step over that is to continue that victim business that we talked about. Is that
yeah,
the structural, I'm setting this thing up so that I'm on the receiving end. If I just keep it going business as usual without any kind of intervention or any kind of attempt to ameliorate the situation.
right. Yeah. So one thing that we did bring up before too is when we're thinking about this time hoarder. What kind of person are they? Are they a giving person, or are they a selfish person? That's a question that we asked when we were
Right.
talking before.
We kind of let them off the hook in our conversation, in the sense that we just said it's a behavior. If it comes at us from left field, we won't know anything about the background of the person, so we can't tell if this is selfish on their part, or it's hard to say. It seems again to come to a matter of self-care if we notice that they are someone who takes
Right. Takes without
routinely,
giving.
right,
Mhm.
without giving,
Mhm.
and they're not even willing to give their attention, if they're not even asking how you are, or if you don't even figure on their landscape.
Right.
Or if
Right.
you're a professional, because you're not really there to talk about you, but maybe that's another call for us. Is in a professional relationship that's effective and productive, what's the give and take of giving and caring between the two people?
And that's important, because you can't really have a relationship unless there's give and take. There has to be, both people have to give. And like they say, there's an old adage about marriage. Both people need to give 100%,
Right.
not each person giving 50%. That
Right.
does not make a good relationship. Both people have to give 100% to have a truly caring, reciprocal, and rewarding relationship. And you can transfer that kind of over to coaching as well.
Right.
You know,
Right.
both people
Right. I
have to
agree.
give. Yeah.
And is it heading in the wrong direction? Because if you take a guess at what the numbers are, you see them getting smaller rather than getting bigger. Oh boy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
So, one thing we kind of came on talking about the point of view, our point of view, as we're trapped in a conversation, we're hopeless. We're kind of hopeless, kind of, where's the exit, or can someone save me? Can I have a friend call me or get me out of this? Like, we're a victim, like you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
But when we have these things to say kind of in our back pocket, we have a new skill now. We have a new point of view, a new skill to intervene and save ourselves, and we can become the hero. We can save ourselves. We don't have to be looking to be saved by someone else to get out of this conversation. We now have some things that we can say and some actions that we can take, because sometimes it takes more than words. Sometimes you actually have to start leaving, in order to do this. But I do like some of these things that we came up with to say. I hadn't heard of those before, like I haven't been paying attention oh my gosh, I haven't even heard the last 5 minutes of what you said. I think it might be time to
I'm gonna share that one with my wife as well. Just as soon as I come off, so that
good.
so guys, if you're listening to this podcast, you should, and you found something of value, go find somebody to tell it to, because
Share
Jenny,
it.
as you know,
Yeah.
sharing is keeping in a way. You tell somebody about it, then you have a better chance of doing it yourself when the time comes, and when that time hoarder gives you a call, and the next time you have that feeling, because you'd have practiced a little bit, right?
Right. And when you teach it to somebody else, you remember it better. I've learned that too, through speaking and through coaching. and parenting, of course.
Right.
You teach it, you actually you internalize it more, so it will help
Right.
you in the long run. It'll help everybody. It's a win-win.
Right. Absolutely. So,
Mhm.
Jennifer Morin, how can folks get to know more about you, contact you, learn from you? Where can they find you on the interwebs?
Oh yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm on Instagram at Jenny Rosso Morin,
Okay.
and we'll share the links. I also have
The show
3
notes.
teachable classes, which are time management classes. They're only 15 minutes long. They won't hoard a bunch of your time, but they're very valuable. One on handling interruptions. Don't let them ruin your day. So that kind of ties in with our topic today. Another one on time estimating, and a third one on prioritizing using the time matrix. So these are the ones that my time, when I teach time management to companies, these are the 3 topics that always come up. They always want these 3 topics. They're super helpful for a lot of executives and regular people too. So
So that folks keep listening. We're going to be introducing you to or sharing with you some information about our next podcast coming up here at the Task Management and Time Blocking Podcast. And let's say bye to Jenny. Jenny, thanks so much for joining us. It's been a great conversation. I'm about to go off and try some of it, which tells me that we broke some new ground.
that's great. Thanks, Francis. It was fun.
Take care, folks. Take care, Jenny. Folks, keep listening. And if you want to leave a comment about this episode or any aspect of the work that we're doing here at the Task Management and Time Blocking Podcast, you can go over to www.replytofrancis.info and send me either a message by text or send me a voice message, a voice note. And as you probably know, we have a couple of places that you can interact with other people, talk about this episode. One is at the community, mightytaskers.scheduleu.org, and you'll see the link in the show notes. And the other, of course, is our upcoming Task Management and Time Blocking Summit coming up in March. 2 outstanding opportunities to interact with other people about the ideas that you've heard on this podcast or any of our episodes that are coming up. And if you'd like to support the work we're doing, I invite you to click on the Patreon link below to make a donation. And please don't forget to like our show and recommend it to others on iTunes, Stitcher, Google, or whatever podcast app or service you're using. This is Francis Wade. I'm signing out. I hope to see you on a future episode. And until then, take care and all the best. See you later.